All right, here we go. Brand new Flyers Daily for the 24th of May, 2024. Flyers Daily, as always, presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. It's been hot the last couple of days. Maybe a little too early for me, a little unseasonably warm, a little humid as well. And this is when I start to get into that mindset of, I can't stand the heat. I'm uncomfortable. Can we get the fall here and get hockey back on the ice? I know we're only at the conference finals for the playoffs, but this is when I start to really begin the process of itching. But in this episode, I think we got an interesting one for you, first and foremost, because Flyers Exit Day interviews continue. And today, the subject matter is a guy that the Flyers signed last offseason. I think he was termed... John Tortorella termed it going into last offseason as, we're not going to make any big splashes in free agency. We have to have addition by subtraction first, and there's got to be subtraction off the roster, and then we're going to backfill. He wanted to get guys in here that brought a very specific type of play, could kill penalties, be a player that provides energy and accountability for the opposition. And one of the guys they signed was a really important signing. It was Garnet Hathaway. And I think all of us kind of knew who Garnet Hathaway was. He played for the Caps, and we saw him, play against the Flyers, and he was an agitator. But sometimes, when you play against a guy 3-4 times a year, the team you watch, you get a sense of who he is to a degree. This season, through the entirety of it, I think we got a real sense of who Garnet Hathaway is as a player to a much larger degree. First and foremost, the way he plays the game is relentless. It is totally relentless, and it is uncompromising. And to me, he was the player on the Flyers roster that had the smallest difference between his best game and his worst game. They were... Sometimes you see players, they have the really good games up here and they have really bad games down here. Garnet Hathaway just kind of resided in pretty much a straight line. He's like the weather in San Diego. It never changes. And that's something that's very commendable. And I think the reason that is because Garnet Hathaway never tries to be what he's not. It's a guy that has a very strong, vision of what his job is. He doesn't stray from it. There were times where he got moved up into higher roles on the team, but it didn't change the way he played. He didn't go, hey, I'm on the second line tonight. I got to dangle through guys and try and go bar down and do this and do... No, he still played his game no matter where he was slotted in the lineup. And to be able to kind of answer the bell game in, game out, the way he played it, again, with very little variance in his best game and his worst game, and to play all 82 games, I think was incredibly impressive. And, there's something we talked to him about in this interview, and I mentioned to him something that Torts and I talked about in Hockey and Hounds in the later part of the season. I had asked Torts, I said, have you ever had a player, coached a player, that you had to remind less of be who he is than Garnet Hathaway? Like, that guy just goes out there and gets after it. And he was a really fun player to watch all season long. Now, look, Flyers need more skill. Garnet Hathaway's not that guy. He had 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. But you do need guys like Garnet Hathaway on your team if you want to go somewhere. And I thought he's a really important player. I think he's going to be an important player for this team next year as well. Still has one more year. He signed that 2-year deal with the Flyers last offseason. And he also talks about in this interview about how much homework he did on Torts, which I think is interesting. But he signed that 2-year deal. It was worth a total of $4.75. So his cap hit is $2.375 million. He's got another year on the deal. Right now, Garnet Hathaway, he's a veteran. He's been in this league a long time. And he's 32 years of age. He's going to be 33 coming up on November 23rd. So we'll see what his future is beyond this season. But I think he's a really important player for this team heading into this season. Once again, really smart guy. Really intelligent. Went to Brown. Really thinks about, when you ask him questions, he really thinks about the answer. He's not going to just give you, yeah, we got to pump pucks deep or work hard. None of that. He's a guy that I found out very early on was going to give you a really well thought out, cerebral, and educated answer. He wasn't going to placate you with cliches. I remember talking to him off ice during a preseason game. And immediately when the interview was over, taping the interview for intermission as he walked off the ice, and I immediately got done that, and I said to my producer back at the radio station, I said, we're going to have to be careful how many times we grab Garnet Hathaway. And he said, why? And I said, because he can go on all day. Like those interviews, the walk-offs are generally anywhere between, 50 seconds and a minute and a half. Garnet went on for about 4 minutes when I said hello. So he was a guy that's going to give you a lot of well thought out. And I don't want to pull a guy like that too often, too, because I think it's important for him to be in the room to discuss things with his teammates, because I think he gives everybody honest feedback there as well. Never with malicious intent, always for the team. There was one situation, it was later in the year, I want to say in that month of March, and he was just an absolute ball of hate on the ice, just bumping into the goalie, just everything. Just all over. I think it was against the Rangers and Shesterkin. Not the game in New York, but the game in Philadelphia. And, he would just get entangled up with the goalie and then not move. Just really annoying behavior of an opposition player. And I had him on in between periods, and I forget what I even asked him, but he gave me a one-word answer. Like I said, you're a guy that's bringing a lot of energy today, and blah, 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 blah. And he said, thanks. And I was stunned. It knocked me back on my heels a little bit because I'm used to these answers from Garnet Hathaway, which are long and, enlightening and all this stuff. And he just said, thanks. And I was like, okay, on to the next question. Thought it was interesting. But here's my conversation with Flyers forward Garnet Hathaway from Flyers Exit Day. It's Flyers Exit Day on Flyers Daily, and we're sitting with Garnet Hathaway. Can I just start here and say this? First of all, you look dapper.
Oh, thanks.
My second thing is, damn, you're fun to watch play hockey.
Thank you.
You work your ass off, man.
Thanks.
Your approach, I asked John Tortorella this on Hockey and Hounds one time. I said, have you ever had a player that you had to tell less to be who he is than Garnet Hathaway? And he said, no. He knew what he was going to get from you every night. You got to pride yourself on that.
Yeah. That's a huge compliment, especially from Torts, who's been coaching for a long time. Coached a lot of great players, and coaches the way that he does, and asks that type of energy from the guys he coaches. Mm-hmm. It's how I've got here, I guess. You know what I mean? It's I don't know any less, and it's a huge compliment, but it's one that I don't know. You can't stop and pat yourself in the back. It's just kind of have to keep going.
It's just kind of who you are. It's funny because he said that when they were talking to you last year, he had heard from some guys that you were doing your homework on him. And he was like, Jesus, Garnet, you know who I am. Like, just sign the damn deal, right? But you were doing your homework on him because you're a very cerebral guy. And you want to know what you're getting yourself into. This is your career. You only get one of them.
I moving my family. I have 2 kids and my wife. And
yeah.
I want to know, and I want to know what
was real and what wasn't.
What they were building here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear it from guys who had played for him. And I talked to guys that liked him and didn't like him.
Yeah.
But I got both sides of it, and I played with guys who'd played under him, and years before they were like, oh man, you would like Torts.
Yeah.
You would like playing for him
because he's going to like you.
He's going to like you. And that was years ago.
Yeah.
And so I think I just wanted to do a little more due diligence and find out what am I signing myself up for?
Yeah. What's it been like playing for him?
Yeah, I think we started with the lab test at camp. That's how it all began. And
you're
felt more like an introduction, right? That camp was.
Were you regretting your decision at that time?
No, you know what? I think my first year pro, was playing for Bob Hartley in Calgary. I was in the minors, but the first NHL camp I went to was Bob Hartley's.
Oof.
And looking back, that camp was tough.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better, but that camp was tough.
So that set a standard right out of the gate.
But
yeah.
it I've had easier camps since Bob's, but knowing the work I needed to put in for that camp, and knowing the next year when I went, like what I had to do in order to be prepared for it, I had that same kind of youthful feeling I get, like, before this summer. I was excited, but I knew that it was a kick in the butt. It was like, hey, you got to be ready. It's going to hurt, but I think the best part is you're doing it with, 30 other guys.
Yeah. Shared pain.
Shared pain that same, they put the work in the summer.
Yeah.
They were doing the same extra work as you. Not every camp's like this camp. You have to do more work in the summer than guys you're skating with and training with. You have to do more. And that bonds you together
right out of the gate
before you even get here.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Because without that bond, you don't have shit in that locker room if you don't have that bond.
I think that bond it just means a lot. And when it comes down to a tough time, the ups and downs of the season, no one's barking at each other. Everyone has each other's back. You might not win the game, but you're building a culture, and I think that's what we did this year.
And you know that you're not going to turn on each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. I think it means a ton. What do you do to detach? What are you going to do? I know you got the family, and
that's a big one. It was my wife. My wife brought my son to the game last night, and he was basically the first person I wanted to see after the game.
Perfect.
I don't usually see him. He usually stays 2 periods. But yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah.
And so I tried kind of detaching as quick as possible, and he doesn't know what happened in the game. It's not even 3.
Yeah.
I think to detach, I get to spend a lot more time at home.
Yeah.
My wife will be happy. The travel, I know you guys know where we are, but we're moving a lot. We're always on, it feels like we're always on the road or at the rink till 11 p.m. after a game.
Going to the ring for morning skate, back to back to the ring, back to here. I hope airplane.
I don't have to keep telling the kids I'm going to the rink.
Planes, trains, and automobiles all nonstop.
Exactly.
Like John Candy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So it'll, obviously it's tough. I think trying to separate that work and life mindset, and how do you not bring work home with you? I think that's something I'm still working on, and I have been for.
If you figure it out, write a book.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something I'm still working on. But with kids, it's awesome because they don't care.
Yeah.
And I think
they don't care whether dad's a mailman or a professional hockey player.
They just want dad to be home. So
no matter what, you're not cool in the kids' eyes. You're still dad.
I am. Yeah.
Are you
I'm cool now. Yeah, right now. Oh,
for now.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah, wait till they turn 7.
Yeah. No, they're
you're done.
Yeah. Give me some hope.
Cool dad's over.
Some hope.
You're dork dad all of a sudden. At least I was.
Maybe that's just you.
Could be a me problem. Garnet, it was awesome to watch you this year. Awesome to cover you. You're such a smart guy and cerebral. And I love the way you play the game. And I remember texting Danny at some point in the season. I said, "You're not getting enough credit for the signing of Garnet Hathaway this year." And he said, "Thank God he's forechecking other teams and not our team." That's what he said to me. So congrats on the season, and best of luck this summer. Enjoy it, and we'll be back before you know it.
Yeah, can't wait.
All right, there he is, Flyers winger Garnet Hathaway from Flyers Exit Day. Interesting stuff, and I love that he did so much homework on Torts. Like I'm moving my family. I got kids. I gotta make sure, I know what I'm doing here. I know what I'm getting myself into. And I do love that he embraced. God, I forgot about the day 1 of training camp fitness challenge, the skating that the players do. No pucks on the ice and that stupid rope on the ice that all the players hate. I got news for Garney though. We're a lot closer to that happening again than we are from when that happened last. That's just around the corner. I'm sure players are already dreading that day, but preparing for that day coming up in September. I'm ready for it as well. Of course, I don't have to skate it. So thanks to Garnet Hathaway for taking the time. We'll continue our Flyers Exit Day interview series coming up next week. I did want to get to this DM that I got. Now, last Friday, I believe it was last Friday, I went on a rant about the Flyers, not being one of those teams that year in, year out, packs the barn in the spring, orange all over the place, playoff runs and excitement and opening up the bandwagon, all of that stuff, that they haven't been that really since 2012. And, one of the things I brought up with that was that I remember growing up from the time I was in kindergarten till I graduated high school in 1991. That 12 or 13 total years. And at that time, even though kind of early in my high school years, the Flyers were not a playoff team. They had that run where I think they went 4 or 5 years and they didn't make the playoffs pre-Lindros. But that being said, most of my life they were a team that was going to Cup finals and long playoff runs. They go to the final in 80. They go to the final in 85, 87, other long playoff runs in there as well. And what that did to me as a fan of the Flyers and fan of hockey, that's how you grow fandom, is when teams go on a run, they pull people in maybe they wouldn't pull in. Some of those people that get pulled in, the tentacles get, the hooks get in them, and they're fans for life. And my son is going into his senior year of high school next year, and he hasn't had that because the organization just hasn't put together, playoff run after playoff run like that. And when they've gotten in, they didn't do a lot of damage, since 2012, with the exception of the bubble where they won a round, but that was so bizarre and all of that. So I went on a rant about that. And I got this DM from a guy on Twitter, Carl Burke, and he said, "I'm a regular listener, more times than not, agree with your opinions, but I can honestly say I haven't agreed more than I did on Friday." That's the episode he's referring to, the one I just talked about. He said, "I turned 55 in late April, and I find myself realizing that I am most definitely on the back end of life. I wholeheartedly have faith in the front office and Danny Briere and Keith Jones and agree with the rebuild, but I can't help feel they need to speed it up. It's been too long since the days of absolute pride in our team, and although they've made huge strides, I want that back again." He says, "These days, if I go to more than one day or not quite feeling the best, I find myself wondering it's the beginning of the end of my time here, and I really need to see the boys in at least another finals before I go." And you're only 55, Carl. We got more time than we think. I very well may have a lot of time left on Earth, but I would rather see this Flyers process sped up just to be safe. These are things that kind of creep into your mind when you get north of 50. And maybe you'll lose your parents. Like when I lost my dad in 2016. I lost my mom right before the pandemic in 2020. It wasn't from the pandemic, but so I lost both of my parents in about a 3.5-year stretch. And all of a sudden it's weird. When you lose both of your parents, there's this overwhelming feeling of, okay, I've been moved into the on-deck circle of this circle of life. My parents are now gone. I'm the next generation to go. And even though when my mom passed away, I was 48, still, there's a lot of life left, but you have that feeling. And Carl goes on to say, "I need to have Flyers playoff hockey to look forward to at the end of every season again, and to have the belief that they have a chance to go all the way." He said, "I'm sick and tired of cheering for my backup team." God, do I identify with that. There's teams, I don't have teams that I cheer for as a backup team. I always had a team in every sport. I love the hometown team. I love the Eagles, but then there was an AFC team that I really respected. Or in baseball, same thing. You had an American League team. Or just, you would never cheer for them over your hometown team, but you were interested in them. In hockey, when I was growing up, the team was, oddly enough, Vancouver. I loved Vancouver. I don't know why. The uniforms were hideous, but there were players that I loved. I loved Kirk McLean. They get to the Cup final in '94 against the Rangers, so the shared interest was there. Hey, let's see if Vancouver can beat the Rangers. I love Pavel Bure and Cliff Ronning, the diminutive guy, and Jeff Courtnall and Jyrki Lume, on and on. That was a team that I really liked. But, yeah, I don't want to have to invest in a backup team anymore either. Carl goes on to say they've built a solid core, and I think one offseason and slick trade deadline could put this team in the right position for the 24-25 season. I disagree with that. I'll go on, though. He said, I'm not even going to speculate on the latest rumors, Matvei Michkov. That would just be icing on the cake. Also, I think they will be just fine with Ersson and Fedotov this year. He said, I played goal as a kid growing up in Canada where we played 12 months of the year and have remained a goalie fan. Fedotov will be fine, just given a little time to adjust. Have a great day. I'll continue to listen to my favorite Flyers podcast for your well-thought-out opinions. Carl. Thanks for the note, Carl. It's, when I did that rant on that Friday episode a week ago, it wasn't planned. I don't script anything out. As you guys can probably tell if you watch this on YouTube, you can tell that I'm not scripted. I don't have any notes, or sometimes I write like a couple of I literally, for this podcast, I wrote 2 bullet points down about the Garnet Hathaway interview. That's all I did. Sometimes I have things written down in my notebook here, like my bold predictions. They're right there. And then just other little things that to-do lists or things that I want to remind myself to get to. I don't come in with this super scripted out podcast. To me, this is just a conversation that I'm having with you. Whether you're in your car right now, you're sitting in your office, you're at the gym, whatever you're doing, this is just a conversation. But everything I meant, because it's what comes into my mind, and I'm not one of those hot take guys. I am never going to come on here and just say something to elicit some phony reaction. I'm not going to come up with a phony opinion to be divisive or conversational or confrontational or any of those things. It's not what I do. I think that's disingenuous. I think it's incredibly demeaning to the audience to do that too. If you're being disingenuous with the audience, I think that's the worst thing you can do. It's a lack of respect. And I respect anybody that listens to this podcast. But as far as your note, let's go into a couple of the details of it. As far as speeding up the rebuild, I get what you're saying, and I feel what you're saying is that you want to speed this up because we want to get to the right place faster. But you won't get to the right place and remain there for any period of time if you cut corners. I say this a lot. When you have pizza, like cook-at-home pizza, if you microwave it, you'll have pizza faster. But it will taste like you microwaved it, and it will not be as good. You have to let it cook properly in an oven, a brick oven, whatever you're going to cook it in. But when you microwave it, it tastes like it's microwaved, and it's not as good. Same thing with building a hockey team. You can't microwave it. You have to do things in a very strategic order, and you have to do things very diligently. You have to take emotion out and temptation to not cloud your judgment in how you build this. Now, along the way, things may present themselves to you that you hadn't considered or you thought were maybe a box to check a year or two down the road. And because it's presented itself, you have to consider it now, because it may not present itself in the perfect plan that you had 2 years later. Like, for example, if Brady Tkachuk, we've mentioned him a couple of times now, if he were to become available, you have to consider that. Would it be more ideal to get a player of Brady Tkachuk's ilk maybe a year or two from now? Probably. But that may not be an option a year from now. And if something like that is an option now, you have to go, okay, this is presenting itself to me now. It may not present to me later, but I have to do it now because I may not get a chance to do this then. And we need a player like that for the long-term success and health of this franchise. So I think you have to be ready to pivot at all times. But I'm not for just speeding it up to speed it up. And I do disagree that, I think they have a solid core of young players. We all know what they need. They need more of. They need some more help down the middle. They need some more high-end talent and offensive talent. And they still need a top right-side pairing defenseman. And look, those things aren't easy. They don't just grow on trees. You can't go outside and just pick off hey, there's the right shot D tree and just pick one off and have it be good. Now, there's some promise there with Bonk and, some other elements, but they're not things that can just happen easily. So I disagree with the fact that this team could with a slick offseason and trade deadline, they could put themselves in position this coming year in the 24-25 season. I don't think they're there yet. I think they need to become a playoff team next year, a bona fide playoff team, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I don't think this is the huge offseason. Cap situation, a lot of money comes off after next year. I think you need to be in the trade market and big game hunt there. Obviously, Matvei Michkov, what happens there will change some things and timelines, but we'll see where it goes. So I disagree that this is the most key offseason. It's a piece of the puzzle. To me, it's not the hugest offseason that there will be. I think the following 1 and 2 after that are. As far as Carl also said, I think that they'll be fine with Ersson and Fedotov in net this year. That Fedotov is going to be fine just given a little time to adjust. I don't know that yet. Fedotov, I think, is going to be 28 coming up in season. And it is a big adjustment. I don't judge him. And the reason why I say I don't know that yet has nothing to do with the 3 appearances he had at the end of last season. But I don't know if he can adjust to the North American game. I have to see it. I have to see way more to be able to know that. I know we see his size and we go, oh my God, it's great. Look at the size of this guy. You can't see the net, blah, blah, blah. Well, goaltending is a lot more than size. It's movement, efficiency in movement. It's play reading. It's the ability to use that size to your advantage by being able to look over, under, and around screens. I don't know that. I haven't seen enough of Ivan Fedotov to know that for sure. Even Ersson, to me, has question mark elements to his game. When he was good this past season, he was really good. 4 shutout, the whole thing. But there was the period of time where he really struggled. What is next year going to be? Coming into camp with the expectation of being the man, fighting off a guy in Ivan Fedotov who's trying to grab the crease as well. What effect is that going to have on Ersson? What kind of effect is that going to have on Fedotov? And what is the effect overall that goaltending is going to have on the Flyers? Because this past season, prior to Carter Hart leaving with Ersson and Hart, goaltending was a huge strength and a huge reason why belief was able to get put into the equation, and this team was able to win games, take teams by surprise, play fast off the rush, give up rush attempts, but get bailed out by great goaltending. So those things are all part of it as well. Awesome DM, though, Carl. I appreciate it very much. And you can always shoot me a DM on Twitter at Jason Myrt, JasonMyrt. You can send me email as well at jasonjason.myrtetus, MYRTETUS@gmail.com. It is Memorial Day weekend, so everybody have a really good, safe holiday weekend. Bill Meltzer will join us Monday. We will have an episode for you. We don't take days off around here. We only do 3 days a week right now, but Bill's episode will be coming up on Monday. So join us then for a brand new Flyers Daily.